All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Integrated Business Planning for Leaders in Manufacturing, brought to you by Corporate Renaissance, a acquisitive company, and Board International. I'm Thomas Ironstone. I lead the Management Solutions Division at CR Group Inquisitive. We are a premier board partner in North America. My professional background covers consulting in the realm of accounting, finance, strategy, execution, and I've delivered comprehensive corporate performance management engagements across multiple industries, multi-billion-dollar organizations, and mid-market organizations, both publicly traded and privately held. So at CR Group Inquisitive, we strive to be your organization's trusted partner for business technology transformation. Our teams are composed of individuals that have both business and technology backgrounds. And the idea is that we can truly understand your business requirements, understand the industry you're in, and help translate that into technological solutions to help meet those needs. Our solution portfolio is designed to help organizations address today's challenges and drive performance. Our solution portfolio is designed around our patented Level 7 framework to help your foundational mission-critical systems, such as ERP and CRM, collaboration, talent management, and reporting, all the way up to corporate performance management and delivering solutions for your planning, forecasting, and strategy execution needs. We've been around for over 30 years, covering everything specifically for our corporate performance management practice. Has been around for over 30 years, covering everything from budgeting, planning, forecasting, financial consolidation, strategy maps, scorecards, you name it. We've essentially done it all within the corporate performance management realm. We're known to decipher some of the most complex requirements and translate those into solutions that will work best for your organization from a design and delivery perspective. We understand that there's no one size fits all when it comes to budgeting and planning, and that's where we come in. We can help your organization understand what solutions will work best for you in your organization. The agenda today, we're going to first do an overview of Board International so you can get some background of the company. We're going to talk a bit about integrated business planning and what it means to you. Then we're going to be doing a deep dive into manufacturing planning, so around S&OP. So we'll do a bit of a deep dive there, and we're going to talk about some success stories as well. Board International at a glance. It's been around for multiple decades with over 2,000 customers globally. The partner network is quite strong and has been experiencing top-line growth of over 20% year over year. And this is the 9th straight year of 20% yearly growth in a row. The Board platform is quite powerful in the sense that it unifies business intelligence, predictive analytics, and performance management in one single integrated environment. And where this differs from other platforms that are out there, that from a code base and from a technology standpoint, a lot of competitors that try to deliver a solution like this tend to cobble together multiple different platforms and code bases which don't have the same seamless environment that Board has. Board has one integrated toolkit to deliver business intelligence, performance management, and predictive analytics. It's able to tap into your ERP systems, your CRM systems, legacy systems. If you have data warehouses, data lakes, if you have cloud systems, Board has cloud connectors to tap into those as well. And also if you have flat file data, Board can ingest all of that. From the overall architecture, once Board is able to tap into those data sources, it provides a very structured framework to be able to ingest the data, structure it, that will then allow you to deploy models around business intelligence, so scorecarding, dashboarding, reporting. For performance management, a bit of our subject today will be around budgeting, planning, and forecasting. You can also do things like profitability analytics, strategy management, and financial consolidation. And then with Board's Beam engine, delivers predictive analytics with machine learning forecasting, simulation, clustering, and a whole library of statistical functions. And again, this is all one single platform with one single toolkit across everything that you have in here. So it's a very powerful modeling platform. So what's the difference with Board? The strong focus here is on intelligent planning. As we know, over the past few years, there's been lots of uncertainty with events that are happening. And so it's driving organizations that have to to pivot, to understand what the impacts will be on the organization from a financial standpoint. And they need to be able to reforecast to understand what changes they need to make, and even based on those environmental drivers, how that's going to impact the bottom line. So all of this volatility that's happening in the world, we need to understand how that's going to affect the organization and help us make better business decisions. Now, from a complexity standpoint, where Board shines is that this platform, it's truly a modeling platform that it can ingest a very granular level of data. So when we model, build out different templates and calculations, Board can do calculations at a very, very granular level to be able to get the details that you need to get that accuracy, where other applications fail because it can't ingest the same amount of data and deliver the same amount of performance. Now with this, the idea is allowing the organizations to plan smarter. So we can understand what actually drives the business, build out those very detailed driver-based planning templates that we struggle to build in Excel or even other applications that are more spreadsheets and sheet-based. And then with that, we can help it drive better outcomes. So maximizing contribution of organizations across the business, getting their inputs so that we're actually building something meaningful. And through that, the goal is to drive transformation. So we're streamlining planning across the business, and the idea is to actually build sustainable change. So as you're probably well aware, some organizations might be in this case, they might be transforming out of this situation, or they might already be there, but organizations can get in a bad habit of planning in silos. And the issue is that there's so many interdependencies from a planning standpoint that when we develop a plan that's not fully integrated, it will not be reflective of assumptions and variables that could have a rippling effect across the plan. So having an integrated plan will allow to balance production levels from a manufacturing standpoint, from an S&OP standpoint, to develop a plan that's fully integrated to understand the impact on production, to allow us to optimize inventory levels, to manage the introduction of new products, conducting product rationalization, as well as planning for the required resources to deliver on that plan. And the desire state is to break down those silos. So with sales and operations planning, S&OP, the goal is to allow for increased accuracy, drive insights, and increase visibility across the organization. This also leads a plan that is more tangible and is properly linked to the desired business outcomes. So if we know that these are the drivers and it's integrated across the overall plan, across those different formerly silos, we can understand what the impact will be on those different areas, and it'll help the different leaders across the business make better decisions that, again, are more in line with our overall strategy. So the Board Intelligent Planning Platform was really designed with this intent to break down silos. So this is getting at this whole shift, getting away from just FP&A, getting towards extended planning and analysis, which many know as xP&A, getting that collaboration across the organization. So as we talked about earlier, the integration, Board's able to tap into your different source systems that you require for planning and analysis and reporting, whether that's your ERP, your CRMs, your data warehouses, data lakes, cloud applications. And then the powerful Board toolkit with an intuitive UI allows us to develop process automation, develop templates, reporting, and structures that are more meaningful to our organization, and then ensure the proper security layers across that. And then we're ultimately delivering planning analysis across finance, sales, supply chain, retail, HR, and much more. So the integrated planning process, if we think of this as a whole, at a high level, Board is trying to drive a holistic approach for performing strategic planning. And within strategic planning, Board has the capabilities to work through strategic thinking, initiative tracking, capital allocation. And with that strategic plan in mind, because the Board's holistic framework and the modeling approach allows that to help guide the budgeting and planning process, or specifically the sales and operations planning. And with that guided together hand in hand, that feeds into the overall financial planning process of our organization, be able to get consolidated reports, statements, variance reporting, and management reporting packages. And all of this can be delivered within one single platform, which is Board. We'll be doing a deep dive specifically into sales and operation planning, the bottom left corner there, where we're going to be looking at planning and going through a detailed example of how this can actually impact your organization and factor in all those different variables and linkages. So with this particular chart that you see up on the screen, the idea, if you think of an end-to-end planning process, and again, this is just an example. This could be, say, a consumer packaged good type example in a manufacturing space, but the concepts apply elsewhere as well. But from end to end, there's different hats that are involved in the process. So whether it's the sales team, the production team, the procurement team, the warehousing team, the logistics team, HR, you name it, all sorts of people have an important role to play in the overall planning process. So we're going to be doing a bit of a deep dive. We're going to look at those linkages, everything from price lists feeding into the sales plan, feeding into the production plan, understanding our raw material costs and requirements, the overall, the variable overhead components, the labor, and how that all links together into our bill of materials and our warehousing levels from a production standpoint, understanding how to build out our logistical plan and see what the overall view is from a financial statement perspective, so you can actually see your margins, your breakdown, all the way to EBITDA based on changing different assumptions that affect all components of your model. And with this, just to summarize, at a very high level, which we'll be going through, is the idea demand feeds into volume and price lists to get revenue. And on the cost of goods sold side, we have our production plan, which is driven by volume, and we have our cost per unit, which we'll go through in the bill of materials. And then from a workforce standpoint, you have the variable labor, you have fixed labor, and how the headcount helps drive and deliver overall plan and understand particular constraints. And then from say a fixed costs and marketing and sales perspective, understanding what our marketing costs are, what our campaigns are that are going to help drive our overall revenue. So specifically diving into sales planning, one key aspect of this and what board delivers is helping drive ownership and accountability that really should be held with the sales team. So sales targets are set by the sales leaders, and it's actually linked to the overall growth plan. So when we're looking at that overall holistic approach, when we're doing our strategic planning, we have certain growth targets. We want that to feed down into S&OP, where we can understand what the overall targets are and how that's going to feed into our detailed plan. Another critical part here is how we're talking about how board can integrate with all of your source systems. So your ERP systems, your CRM systems. So being able to pull that historical data, maybe it's your pipeline data, and be able to feed that into your planning process. So you get better visibility and can plan and forecast better. And also from a reforecasting standpoint, this is also critical. So we're not just building plans that are at the dollar level. We want to understand what our volumes are by customer or by product, and get views by channel and product mix, you name it. So we want to get all that granularity from a planning perspective that drives our decisions, whether it's around customers and channels, products and divisions, regions and territories, because they all have implications from a market growth perspective, market size perspective, but also from a pricing perspective, and then also from a cost perspective. So all of this helps with their overall rationalization and planning. Another key piece about this is understanding the right drivers. So when we're doing our sales plan, we need to break it down into meaningful drivers that allow us to flex the budget. So this is driving it based on, say, price lists, which could be set by, say, channel and product, which there might be specific restrictions. When we're planning volumes in a particular channel, we know that it's going to be driving off of a specific price list. Controls around discounts to understand where that responsibility lies, and when we apply discounts in the plan, to understand what the impact is going to be on volume. And then, of course, volume, where when we're developing our sales plan, to plan appropriately by volumes, looking at historical trends and forecasting what's going to happen in the future, where we're looking by channel and product and region. And then getting into the cadence of a rolling forecast. So getting beyond just doing an annual budget, and even just getting beyond doing a reforecast to the end of the year, organizations are moving towards a rolling 12-month forecast, as well as getting into the cadence of breaking this into their weekly sales reviews. Again, feeding through this S&OP process, understanding the drivers. There's implications of selling in particular markets and regions. So whether we're in particular countries or particular states or provinces within those countries, there's going to be implications from, say, a sales tax perspective. And that's going to help drive some of our decision making. There could also be excise tax, environmental fees, import fees. All of these things should be built into the model to help us make the correct decisions from a planning perspective and also get very accurate margin analysis and profitability breakdown. And this drives accuracy with the rate calculations to help us make better decisions and rationalize products and markets. So what products do we that we're currently selling, making decisions on introducing new products. So with this will allow us to understand that profitability of those products and also selling into particular markets, because this might make us decision whether we should drop a particular product or add a particular product. From a bill of materials and procurement standpoint, from a structural perspective, a key piece of this from cost planning, production planning, we have the sales plan that feeds through to production. So we want to make sure that that's also linked to finished goods production and then all of the multi-level bill of materials that might go into producing those goods. So with that, we need to build out the multi-level to understand that for this finished goods, there might be a packaging step, there might be a, say, a brewing step or whatever it might be that comes up in those levels that are required to understand material requirements, lead times. And from a raw material standpoint, a key piece here is that we have all the raw materials linked to the bill of materials. So when we're planning the production, we can understand what our material requirements are. So you link that to inventory levels, setting up your purchasing intervals, minimum levels of inventory you can set up in the model. And then on a cost side, linking that to the contracts you might have with those vendors, you know, what the cost per unit is, but also from a currency perspective. So if you're acquiring raw materials in different regions, we want to be able to understand that FX impact. Also, what goes into this whole bill of materials standpoint from a production perspective are the variable resources and overheads. So this is thinking about all of the electricity, natural gas, water, whatever might go into the overall production process to understand what's the impact from a production and consumption standpoint. And then finally getting the unit costs and currency broken out. So when we're able to understand what our forward-looking plan is, if there's increases, what's going to be the impact on our overall bottom line. And then finally from procurement planning, having all these linkages together, we can truly understand our raw material consumption by item, having that link to vendor to know that we're going to require this product, which we're purchasing from this vendor, and also help us rationalize which vendors maybe we purchase from, understanding the FX impact on currency, and then keeping those forward-looking requirements from a replenishment standpoint all baked into your model. From a production perspective, our sales plan feeds into production. We talked about bill of materials and procurement. However, just from an overall production standpoint, we need to understand our different production facilities, where they're located. Are there multiple lines? Can they produce only certain products or certain SKUs? And all of this can be built into the model, because there might be some capacity constraints from a line, as if we can only produce certain products and they're done in certain runs. This all factors into our planning standpoint, because we might have a sales plan that our production facilities might not be able to deliver. So that might then roll into, do we need to do a big capital project to introduce a new line or upgrade a line, or maybe require some co-packing to help deliver on those on that demand. Also layering in, say, overall equipment effectiveness. So we know from a production standpoint, how much can we actually put through this line, understanding changeovers that might happen, because this is obviously going to impact capacity levels during the day. So if we're doing changeovers, there's going to be some downtime. Then also factoring in maintenance. So if the line's going to be down maybe for a weekend or maybe for a day, that needs to get removed from your overall plan capacity, because if we have our sales plan and we know that we need to take the line down for maintenance, we might not be able to deliver on that because our line's down for maintenance and can't produce those same levels that are required in the plan. And then also location. So different locations might have their separate lines and whatever products they can actually produce, but there also might be cost implications, whether those products are produced in one location versus another when we're factoring in all of the variable overheads. That's a good segue into variable overhead, where we're looking at utility consumption. So with the locations, the products, and understanding the metering and levels that each of those products consume on those production lines, we can break it down to a detailed level where we're understanding the unit consumption by product or intermediate step in the production process for electricity consumption, water consumption, natural gas consumption, chemical consumption, and others. Then from a warehousing logistics perspective, so continuing to flow through, we talked about the sales plan, we went through production, raw material requirements. Now we're getting into actually warehousing from, say, a finished goods perspective. So here we're understanding what locations we have. So for producing and we're storing them in warehouses, are those locations close by? Are they close to the markets that we're selling to? Then there's a capacity component here, because as an example, there might be a limit in terms of pallets that can fit in that particular location. So it's important to understand that, again, based on the required demand, based on what we can produce and the lead time, can we actually warehouse that finished good product? So then we might have constraints built into the model where we can understand if there's a requirement for outside storage, and which might come at a cost and help us, again, make decisions on whether this makes sense from a business perspective. Then next is logistics. So again, as we talked about, where we're warehousing it, where we're shipping it to, so understanding those locations, where we're producing it, where we're storing it, where we're shipping it to, will all have cost implications. Also making decisions between using internal versus external logistics suppliers. Understanding minimal levels. So do we need to fill the truck to a certain level before we'll do a shipment? Contracts with those vendors, and then obviously lead time to be able to get it to the customer in a timely fashion. Next, after we're getting out of the variable components, we're going to start thinking about the fixed components, so the fixed costs. So what drives sales, marketing, campaigns, trade shows, conferences, things of that nature. So what investments are we making from an OpEx perspective to say, we need to do these campaigns this year to help drive demand, introduce a new product? What trade shows do we need to go to be able to keep in touch, whether it's our customers or B2B, so other businesses that we sell to? And then conferences that we might need to have a presence in as well. And then all of the other back office services, whether it's IT, finance, or office administration, they have all the additional overhead costs that need to be factored into supporting our overall business. We need to know our fixed cost levels as well as our variable costs and margin to, again, to help us make decisions. Now we're getting into the capital planning component. First up is the planning out new assets. So when we have the different leaders across the business, whether it's decentralized or centralized, one important component is to allow them to plan what they need to purchase in this upcoming year, be able to determine what the cost is, what currency they're buying it, when they plan to buy it, when they plan to put it into operation. And then from the back end of the model, it will do all the forward-looking calculations in terms of depreciation and cash flow. So we're putting this into the hands of the leaders in the business that actually do that, the capital planning, to plan the acquisitions of those new assets. And they don't have to think about, how do I calculate depreciation, making sure that the timing of cash flow is correct, that kind of thing. It can all be automated within the platform. Then also making the decisions whether it's commercial or operational. So on the commercial side, there might be new technology that we need to drive the business. It might be new cloud applications, upgrades to facilities. And then on the operational side, there might be upgrades to production lines, major overhauls that might be required to a plant, or maybe just the acquisition of new equipment. And we do all of this for one one important aspect is the reporting and analysis that we're trying to get out of it. So it's wonderful that we build, say, a detailed S&OP model that has all these variable components and drivers, but we want to be able to get analysis out of that to help us make decisions. So with the board platform, it helps us drive variance analysis where we can help break down product, volume, mix to help us make those decisions and understand how we're tracking against our budget, where our assumptions differ. From a financial standpoint, be able to produce the forward-looking P&Ls, cash flows, breaking down variable versus fixed expenses from an analysis standpoint. And then also getting some very good operational reporting and analysis, so to understand volumes, cost analysis, consumption levels. And this goes across the whole organization, where you can also get cost center breakdown, whether it's IT, finance, HR. All right, so now I'm going to jump into just a quick live use case where I'm going to go through an example where we're looking at the different drivers and understanding that whole S&OP process where we can have the detailed breakdown. And again, this is just an example. It's more on the consumer packaged goods side of things, but the use case certainly applies across the board. All right. So on this screen here, looking inside the board application at a very, at essentially a sample model and fully understanding that board is a modeling tool, so it can essentially be molded and shaped and configured however it needs to. But the idea here we're seeing that same variable component that we're looking in the slide deck. So we have price lists that feed in the sales plan, which go into our production plan, all of the raw material, variable overhead, variable labor, linkages into the bill of materials, production plan flowing into warehousing, sales volume flowing into fees and sales tax based on the regions we're selling. And all of this, if we make one change here, will have a ripple effect downstream, which will then drive our financials so we can actually see the full P&L view, margin analysis, break down to EBITDA, so we can actually get better insights and make better decisions, and also understanding where the variance is coming from as well. So I'll just do a quick walkthrough here. But again, this is just purely illustrational. So I talked about the concept of setting, say, price lists. So the idea, you might have a specific channel, you might have specific products, and within that particular channel, you have products and you would have, say, the unit selling price. The idea is when we do the sales plan, that it's going to be leveraging that price list. So this helps for two reasons. One is it allows us to flex the model if we want to do a price increase or decrease. What's the impact going to be for selling in that particular channel, as well as flexing the volumes to know if we do, say, a price decrease, is it going to increase volume enough to be able to drive a big enough change on the bottom line. So you can actually plan your volumes and so your price list to say, okay, is there going to be a price increase where we think this is going to increase to $11 in the latter half of the year? You can actually put that in, $11, and then that ripples through the model where you get that detailed breakdown from a P&L perspective. And again, you can have multiple price lists where you can set all of that up. And when we do the sales planning, so again, price list, we're going to talk about the sales plan, so feeding into the sales plan. So with this, when we're doing our sales plan, I'm just going to expand this right out. But the idea within, we might have different channels. We might be budgeting down to the product customer level. But this would be all of the volumes that we're planning in. So if I put my sales leader hat on, I say these are the trends over the past years. I want to ripple that forward into the budget. I might want to do some percentage increases or decreases, the introduction of the new product that has to be layered in here, so that with the sales price flows through to the volumes, which then ultimately allows us to get the breakdown where we're seeing the total gross sales by those different channels. And again, it could be variable by month, it could be variable by quarter, you could even go down to the weekly level if you really needed to build out that plan. And when you have all of that, you get all sorts of analysis because board is truly multidimensional. So you can get the breakdown from a sales mix perspective. So you can say that these are different products and these are the different categories. And we're saying, okay, for this product, we're selling most of the the 12 versus the 18 versus the 24. And then breaking that out into the details so you can see the breakdown at the actual product level. Get insights from a channel mix perspective. So the products that we're selling into channels, and we can see maybe we're heavily reliant on one channel and might be also heavily reliant on one product. Is that reflective of what has happened in the past? Are trends changing? There's so much from a data perspective and analysis perspective when we're planning at this detailed level that better helps us make those decisions. And of course, getting the charting out of it to understand those trends. So to go back to the overall driver-based view, so again, price lists into sales volumes. So now we'll push the sales volumes down into the production plan. So with this can be done many different ways, but the whole idea here is that we have, here we're breaking down to a weekly level, and we're saying this is our opening balance for, say, the start of the planning period. These are the expected sales. Then we start breaking down, understanding what do we need to produce. So based on our opening balance, what we're planning on selling and shipping, and what are the lead time, what's the lead time for those shipments, to be able to work backwards and determine what we need to produce. There's many different ways we can approach this. So one approach is we might say we might need a certain level of inventory on hand at the end of each week for particular products. So weeks of inventory on hand. So you can actually set up variables where you'd say, okay, I'm going to say we require specific weeks of inventory on hand for these products. So I might say for this product, at the end of each week, we require 6 weeks of inventory on hand on average. And then the forward-looking plan ripples through to say, based on which lines can produce this, what are our minimum inventory requirements, it will ripple that forward to actually tell us theoretically what we should be producing on a weekly basis for those different products. And what you see here is some intelligence built in where we're able to flag where we're reaching capacity. So if we need to shift production earlier 1 week or back 1 week, you have that flexibility when you start building out these models to be able to say, okay, well, week 5, we're going to be close to hitting capacity. And if there's a swing a particular way, then maybe we can't actually deliver on our plan. So this could be driven from anything from downtime. So if you say, as an example, if there's planned downtime in a particular week, that could be the reason why we're not going to reach our planned production for the week. So it might make decisions in terms of scheduling that planned downtime as well. And other factors could also be layering in the line capacity. So what's the daily capacity? What's the run rate for that particular line? Again, that will layer into the overall production capacity of each of the lines that you might have within that plant. And this, again, can be done by line. It can be done by lines within the plants, and then you can say which lines can actually produce which products. So you actually get the full detailed view of the sales plan flowing into the plant, flowing into the production lines, and the timing of the weeks that is produced in order to deliver on our required shipments. So after the production plan is produced from a finished goods standpoint, that production plan is going to consume raw materials, variable overhead. And the linkage there is really through the bill of materials. So if you think about it, we need to produce these finished goods. These finished goods have a bill of materials, and that particular bill of materials might be multi-level. So there might be the finished goods where there's the packaging and intermediate steps that are required. And each of those could be consuming different levels of raw materials and variable overheads. So before I get into the linkage on the bill of materials, I'm just going to quickly jump to raw materials. So based on the production plan, and I'll show you the linkage on the bill of materials shortly. But with this, when we're looking at it, we can start to understand what are our requirements from a raw material standpoint. So based on the bill of material linkage, we can say, these are the raw materials we need, and these might be the categories within that. And these are, say, the different items that we have, which again are linked into the bill of materials, which could have different units of measure, different currencies. It could have, based on the currency, converting it into a common reporting currency. And then based on the overall production plan and minimum inventory levels, we can then understand what the total consumption is from a material standpoint, and then also understanding the cost standpoint from a procurement perspective. So we understand that we need to say acquire these materials on a certain frequency with our vendors, and we'll be able to understand from a cash flow standpoint what the cash outlay is going to be on that on those different intervals, and that we're making the right decisions from a purchasing perspective. All right, so next up, going from raw materials, we'll look at variable overhead. So with variable overhead, one key piece here is that we have all of the, we have the production lines, we have the products, and those sort of the finished goods and the different intermediate steps that happen in the production process. But those can impact, from an overhead perspective, the amount of electricity that we're consuming to produce those items, the amount of natural gas, CO2 consumption, water consumption that's going into actually producing those goods. So we can take those different rates, convert them to understand what the actual annual usage is in terms of what their actual unit of measure, to then calculate out our utility costs. And so then we can get the breakdown by all of those different components, electricity, natural gas, so we can understand based on the production plan what we expect to consume in terms of consumption, as well as what the cost of that will be. So looked at raw materials, variable overhead, and just to show you the linkage here, because obviously going from the production plan into bill of materials, understand the raw materials and overheads, the aspect here, the linkage, that is the bill of materials. The bill of materials can be, say, pulled in, it could be from your ERP system, which maintains the linkage of a particular product or finished good, and understanding what the items that go into that particular recipe for that finished good item or that intermediate step item. So here you have those items, the unit measure, the quantity consumed, the shrink, the overall quantity, including shrink, the unit cost, and then understanding what the extended cost is per unit. So when we're pushing through the production plan, through the bill of materials, we already understand the cost per unit. We looked at raw materials. We looked at the overheads, which again could be done on a unit basis. And that will help us calculate out what our expected cost of goods sold will be here. So here you get the breakdown where you understand the finished goods and the breakdown for the different steps and the products, and even get the full view and linkage from all steps in the production view linked back up to the finished goods, which provides you a ton of visibility. Okay, so this covers the variable component around production. The next piece I want to have a look at is around warehousing and logistics. So with warehousing and logistics, we have our sales, our production plan, and then we start thinking about what are inventory levels, what is that going to be on a weekly basis, and what implications does that have from a storage standpoint. Our warehouses will likely have capacity constraints based on, say, pallets as an example. And once we reach those capacity constraints, then we have a decision to make. One is we stop producing and we can't make our sales, or the other is maybe we have to leverage outside storage to allow us to store those items to help deliver on our forward-looking demand. And so with that, it could come at a cost. And so to understand what our capacity is and what usage of outside storage we might have, we'll say if our limit's 15,000 in the week, if we exceed that, what portion is going to be coming from outside storage. And with that, we'll drive through the cost and then ultimately seeing what the impact will be on the P&L. So that might be a rationalization to say, should we use outside storage or should we not? And then even at the product level to say, if we're storing this product here, it comes at this cost. From a rationalization perspective, does it make sense to even use outside storage to store this product because it's really eating into our margins? And then further rolling that into the overall logistical side of things, where we might have all sorts of rates around based on the weeks that our staff's working from a logistical perspective, overtime rates, the amount of time they're going to be on the road, mileage charge, fuel rate per liter, fuel surge charge by different regions you might be shipping to. All of these rates can be broken down at a very, very detailed level, or you can keep it very summarized. So this might be a little bit more detailed than you might normally go, but again, that will help us make decisions on whether we're leveraging our own internal logistics, going to an outside provider, and understanding what the fully loaded costs are going with that method. And then ultimately getting the final breakdown where you can see the fully loaded costs from a warehousing perspective and a shipping and logistical perspective. Getting back to the overall view before I start wrapping things up, just in summary, we looked at the price list feeding through the sales plan, the sales volume feeding through the production plan, the linkage to the bill of materials, understanding raw material consumption and costs, variable overhead rates and drivers, understanding our warehousing logistical pieces. And each of these, if I change price lists, it's going to impact, say, our sales plan, which could have an impact on our fees and taxes, which could have an impact on our margin. If I change sales volume, how is that going to affect everything in the model? It's going to affect our production plan. It's going to affect our material consumption, our procurement plan, our warehousing, and what all of those have their individual rates and drivers that are going to, again, impact our margin. Our capacity levels, which could impact our ability to sell, which could impact our top line as well as our bottom line. And then just overall from, we talked about FX rates and using different vendors, decisions around procurement, all of that could impact here, which again could rationalize which products we should be producing and selling or which vendors we should be purchasing from. All right, and ultimately that brings you to the overall, let's say, a P&L view, doing analysis as the year progresses, what our actuals were, what our budgets were, how we're performing against plan. And then the idea of being able to do all sorts of forecasts or latest estimates on a rolling basis that we can see how we're tracking and be able to make adjustments to our sales plan, make adjustments to how we're pricing, what vendors we should be using from a procurement standpoint. This becomes a more integrated process as opposed to a static process that happens once a year in silos. And then ultimately, which we'll wrap up shortly, but we do the detailed S&OP. So we looked at that overall view when we're looking at board from a holistic, integrated planning environment, is that S&OP is one component, which we did the deep dive today. But taking the step back from an organizational perspective, there's an overall strategic planning process. There's the overall financial planning perspective where we need all of our P&Ls, our briefing books, our management reporting, variance analysis. All of that is, again, in one single platform. So we might have the budgets, the detailed views that are happening from an xP&A perspective across the organization, but from the leadership across the organization, they need to be able to consume that in a way that is digestible for them and more meaningful to them. So this is where board is able to deliver, say, digital boardroom views where we can have, say, an overall view, how are we performing at the company level, with summarized views by geography, by sales plan, profitability, looking at EBITDA, breakdown on regions, and then drilling down into those different aspects. So this is that whole holistic view where we're looking at the different cross sections, how we're performing from sales, whether it's bookings, pipeline, performing for key customers. From an operational standpoint, getting reporting and analysis from headcount, productivity, customer satisfaction, getting your full financial report suite, so your standard income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, but as well as looking at profitability, value creation, variance analysis, and then being able to do some ad hoc analysis where we're looking at reporting by customer segmentation, regions, and different cohort analysis. And just to show you a few examples here, say at a briefing book perspective, this again is an illustration or example, but as you're probably well aware, for the folks in the finance department, or maybe there might be some folks attending that might be at the exec level or board of directors, but they might get a hard copy printout or a PDF of a report, but it's static. And so the idea here is you want to be able to give them a report that's interactive. So when you're in those meetings and we're discussing commentary that's updated, say on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis, being able to see the views, being able to drill down into the details in the meeting as opposed to asking the question to say, oh, where's this number coming from? You can actually drill down in your interactive flipbook to see what the breakdown that's rolling up into that particular line item. So if someone's questioning a number, you can actually answer it on the spot, as opposed to having to wait to answer it maybe in a couple days once the finance team is able to pull up the details from a GL level to say what's supporting that number. So you can actually answer the question on the spot, and then you're not going to lose the audience. So if they can't trust the number and you have to say, I'll get your response tomorrow, for the rest of that meeting that you're talking to them, they're not going to trust what else they're seeing from a reporting perspective. So making those sessions more interactive, more engaging, enable them to filter, slice, and drill down. And of course, this can also be exported out to PDF, Word, PowerPoint, or static views if external copies are required. And then also the power from a subscription basis, you can create subscriptions where they're delivered to you on a particular frequency and particular format. Then from a visual standpoint, high-level dashboards, so I'm able to understand profitability and EBITDA, the breakdown by the different areas, business units, different legal entities we might have within our overall organizational structure, how we're performing against target, what's our forecast look like, how does this compare to prior year, how we're doing on the current month, how we're doing on a year-to-date basis, how we're doing on a last 12-month basis. You can create all those different views, which are quite powerful. So you're able to get the year-to-date views, last 12-month views. Right now we're looking against forecast, but how are we performing against the original base budget? Being able to filter and slice and dice the data, looking at different industry groups, maybe from a channel perspective, looking at different product groups. If you have multiple legal entities, getting to slice how different companies are performing. And then, of course, looking at profitability. Maybe there's a geographical view. You want to see we're selling into different markets, North America versus Europe, Australia, wherever you might be selling into the world, to see how we're performing against our plan, how we're growing. And this is sales, even breaking down profitability. So looking at, okay, from an EBITDA perspective, how are we doing those different regions? And again, all the different comparatives from a time period perspective or a scenario perspective. And the overall sales overview, understanding what's driving the business. So getting that pipeline, understanding the number of opportunities that are coming in the door, a number of that are won, a number that are still open, getting that full detailed breakdown, as well as year-to-date actual sales based on different histograms, how you're segmenting your customer basis, year-to-date sales versus budgets, and also the sales development where we can see what's coming from new customers, what's coming from existing customers, and getting that waterfall view. And then across the board, of course, lots of operational analysis, financial analysis. One interesting piece here that folks love is that with Board, it has very tight Microsoft Office integration where it's integrated with as we're looking right now, everything's cloud-based and it's through the web browser, but Board also integrates with Microsoft Office where we can send stuff out or have it linked in Excel or Word or PowerPoint, where you can actually pull up those different documents. So in the Word case, you download the Word object and you get the full view from an annual report perspective with all the objects linked, or maybe a PowerPoint document, which is quite powerful. All right, so that was the walkthrough from an end-to-end S&OP perspective. And again, just to summarize, understanding the overall corporate process, the demand planning from a sales perspective, all of the production, warehousing, distribution, and all the capacity constraints that we might have, doing the procurement planning from a volume and currency perspective, conducting HR planning, whether it's fixed or variable, and other fixed things you might have to plan for based on marketing campaigns, things of that nature. Another powerful aspect that we can't lose in this is with Board, when we're looking at it, there's the whole concept of scenarios. So when we're doing these plans where we have, say, our price rates or unit costs, where we're flexing the budget and forecast, we want to be able to store those scenarios where we can actually do what-if analysis. So in board, you have that multidimensionality where you can compare any versions against each other so you can see what the impact will be and help with the decision making. Another layer to this, which won't be covered today, but is quite powerful, is board's analytical predictive engine with Beam. And with this, you can actually ingest historical data to run forward-looking models to look at discontinued, intermittent, smooth series, and also do clustering as well, which can help used to feed the planning process or augment it, whether it's another scenario based on what the statistical models are saying versus what the sales team is saying, or just have it fully integrated together. The board platform is quite unique in that sense, that provides that level of flexibility. And then ultimately getting all of that reporting and analysis that you want out of the model. Now, some quick real world examples, some wins. So the board integrated business planning had a lot of success at Coca-Cola in Europe. And so with this, it was able to deliver driver-based supply chain P&L forecasting as we gone through breaking down manufacturing, logistics, warehousing requirements, capturing all of the overhead across multiple countries. So getting all of that FX and location components built in. And with this, the idea is not just looking from a finance perspective. This is truly xP&A, extended planning and analysis, where it's going from the office of the CFO to supply chain management, to controllers, to plant managers, getting everyone involved in making it a holistic planning process. Mitsubishi Electric also had quite a great amount of success with board integrated business planning, able to actually reduce sales analysis time by 99%. The amount of manual work you wouldn't imagine would just consume the finance team, the FP&A teams, the operational teams to be able to produce this data and reporting and analysis, to be able to pull it into an automated platform where it's pulling from the systems, you build out your models, get the reporting, the drivers, and it's able to deliver this analysis across 22 core companies across 7 branches. Toyota also had quite a bit of success as well with IBP, able to successfully deploy a single platform across budgeting, planning, and reporting across 40 companies within the European group. So with this, they're able to increase visibility around profitability analysis and actually driving transformation in their planning process. And with this, as you can see from a user standpoint, the scale can actually get quite large. So as you see here, 750 users that are touching that integrated planning process across the 40 group companies. Copper's also experienced success with the board platform from a consolidated reporting perspective, where they're able to establish a single platform to pull in the data across all entities to enhance overall financial reporting and analysis across 10 plants, across all of the different global business units. All right, so that wraps up the webinar slides. I know we have a few minutes left. I'm going to go to the questions here. So first one is, we have multiple entities with different accounting packages. Can this deliver consolidated reporting on top of planning? So the answer is yes. We have many use cases where the organizations that we work with, they might not just be on standardized on one ERP. And traditionally this happens through acquisitions, or maybe there might be multiple business units that require a very industry specific ERP package. And so with board, it's essentially agnostic to the ERP platform. So you're able to tap into the different ERPs, pull it into board, get the consolidated view. There's the board engine, and without getting too technical, it has a powerful ETL process, so extract, transform, and load. So you can take those different structures and actually roll it into a common data model where we can actually report on all of that across multiple entities, where you get that standardization, which is actually very, very powerful. Okay, another question. We didn't see a lot on the data visualization. Can you talk to board's data visualization capabilities? Yes, I showed a little bit around the digital boardroom piece, where we looked at some of the high-level stuff around EBITDA, some of the geographical representations and charts and waterfall. So with board, much like other data visualization platforms, Board has such a rich planning and modeling capability. It also has a very rich data visualization capability as well. And again, it's all in one single toolkit. So you're not going to one place for planning, not going to one place for building out dashboards. You're essentially doing it all in the same place, which is amazing. So with Board, it's drag and drop, point and click, where you can pick your different data sources, mash data together, and get those rich data visualization capabilities. So just to wrap it up, if you want to book a demo or Board or schedule an assessment, please reach out to us, crg@crgroup.com, or check out our site, crgroup.com/board. Thank you so much and have a great day.